And now it's Deborah Cobelt Live and the Little Italy podcast.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today on Deborah Cobelt Live and my Little Italy podcasts. And joining me today are friends to our show. They've been on quite a few times to talk about generally lifestyle, wellness, foods. And today they're here to talk about their latest book, Managing Cholesterol for Dummies. This is the fifth Dummies book that they've done together as a team. And last year we had them on for their Dummies book, I believe, speaking about extra virgin olive oil and all the benefits of that, which I sort of devour from cover to cover. And I've done the same with this book, and I'll tell you why. Cholesterol confuses me, right? Whenever I go to the doctor, if my numbers are a little high, we're trying to figure out why. We're trying to manage the cholesterol, yet I'm not on medicine. And I have other friends who are equally confused about cholesterol, what it is, the good and the bad. So I've got two experts joining us today to talk about it. So thank you both for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, and if there's a little bit of delay, Dr. Simon Poole is joining us from England. So hopefully there won't be much of a delay throughout our podcast. But I'm actually going to start with either of you, whoever wants to jump in. Tell me about managing cholesterol. Why did you decide to write it? And can you break down for us, in easy bites, if you will, the good and the bad about cholesterol?
Well, I'll start on the story, and then maybe Simon can finish off with the more technical scientific aspects. So our editor approached us. This is the fifth book that we've done in the Dummies series, and they approached us about an idea for cholesterol. And to be honest, it didn't really excite either one of us that much, because cholesterol, first of all, it doesn't seem like that exciting of a topic, but it's something that everybody deals with. And so I discussed it with Simon, and we decided that if we were going to do the book, we wanted to put a different spin on it. We wanted to talk about a lot of the new research that was coming out about different terms and factors that nobody was really talking about, that but could really impact people and help them improve cholesterol. Because believe it or not, 1 in 3 American adults has an issue with managing cholesterol. And in the global area, according to the World Health Organization, we're looking at about 39%, maybe 40% for females. So it's something that everybody has, and a lot of people have issues with. So we wanted to kind of clarify things. And then Simon told me about his brilliant approach, and we took it from there.
Simon, please tell us about that.
So, well, for many years, I've been talking to patients about their cholesterol levels and about how we can perhaps try to help and support them with lowering those cholesterol levels, because we know that some forms of cholesterol are associated with an increased risk of heart disease and stroke. And the great thing about the partnership with Amy is that we are able to translate some very highly technical stuff into not only better language, easier to understand, but also to approaches that involve lifestyle, where we can lower cholesterol and, most importantly, get rid of some of the most harmful forms of cholesterol, which is what we really need to be concerned about. And often in our doctor's office, we'll be given a number, let's say 200, and be told, hey, your cholesterol is too high, you need to do something about it. And really, the end result is often to go on medications. And we wanted to tell a story about cholesterol, which really makes us understand, helps people to understand about the different forms and the way in which we can support those different forms and actually make sure that we really do avoid heart disease and stroke, preferably at first through lifestyle methods.
Which is why you're such a terrific team, because you approach it medically. Amy approaches it from, all of the work that she's done in terms of, foods. How can we manage it in terms of our foods? And we're going to get into that a little bit later. What are the foods that would be best to help to manage cholesterol? But, you mentioned something, doctor, about the number. When I go to the doctor, I'm often a little confused. Mine's a little elevated. And I've had a tough time getting it down. I don't want to go on medicine. Yet I try and manage with lifestyle, but it's just a little bit elevated. Is that dangerous for me? Is it dangerous for the public at large to be having that elevated number? And what could that mean?
So it's not so much about the elevated number, but it's actually more about how you live your life.
Ah.
So we now understand that there are different forms of cholesterol. So for the last many years, we've understood that there's bad cholesterol and there's good cholesterol. So it's not simply about total cholesterol levels. And now we're beginning to understand that actually the problem with cholesterol is when it becomes damaged in our bodies, when it becomes oxidized, and when it causes inflammation of the blood vessels. And that's something that actually we doctors don't measure. There is no standard measurement of something called oxidized LDL cholesterol, which is the really harmful form of cholesterol. So we are measuring an overall cholesterol level, but not being able to take into account how much of it is in this damaged, oxidized form. And the book helps us to understand how we reduce that oxidized LDL cholesterol through dietary and lifestyle methods.
Right. Talk to me about triglycerides. Talk to me about the bad cholesterol, because the numbers, from what I understand, again, I'm no medical professional, have dropped. In other words, if you are, let's say, a 200 or 210, boom, doctors want to put you right on medicine. But it used to be some years ago, that number was a little higher. And I think they tried to manage it more back then with lifestyle. Which is where it becomes a little bit confusing. Either of you can answer this for me, please. How do we know what we should be doing? Do you understand? I'm trying to just sort of make it less confusing for folks.
Yes. So most physicians these days will take your cholesterol level. They'll try to understand your LDL cholesterol, which is potentially harmful, and your triglycerides, which if they're raised, again, can be a problem. And then they'll look at your HDL, which is your good cholesterol. That's the cholesterol which is transporting, that's your lipoproteins, which are transporting cholesterol back from your cells to be processed by the liver. So they'll come up with what we call a cholesterol ratio. Then with that number, it should be put in an algorithm along other risk factors that you might have, such as whether or not you have diabetes, whether you have a family history of heart problems, whether you smoke, and so on. And then they should come up with a 10-year risk of developing heart disease or stroke. This is if you haven't had a heart disease or stroke diagnosis. And that 10-year risk might be, say, 10%. Or 8%, depending on your age, your cholesterol level, and all of these other factors. And then there comes a time where at 10%, perhaps in Europe, or at 8% in the US, there's an offer of a medication to lower the cholesterol. But the key thing in these discussions about risk is what's not being discussed is how much oxidized cholesterol you have. And that's the damaged cholesterol from free radicals which circulate around us depending on our lifestyle and which damage the cholesterol. We all need cholesterol for healthy brain function and other functions of the body. It's the damage to the cholesterol through smoking, through pollution, through poor environments, through poor sleep, through poor diet, through lack of exercise. It's that damage to cholesterol that we don't measure that's really, really key.
And ultimately, what can happen? I mean, I suppose stroke. I mean, could you list some of what can happen?
Well, yes, if you have lots of this oxidized LDL cholesterol, it embeds in blood vessel walls, it causes inflammation to those blood vessels, and that inflammation causes narrowing and also blood clots, which can result in heart attacks and strokes. And that's what we're all really concerned about. But we know that we can reduce these levels of inflammation, these levels of oxidation of LDL through healthy lifestyle measures. And that's really, really key. So I would recommend to any of your listeners who have a conversation with their physician about their high cholesterol to really get to grips with how lifestyle can help support them reduce the risks of heart attacks and strokes. And that's really what we cover to a large extent in the book, those ways to exercise and get a great diet that can reduce the oxidation, the damage to the LDL, and the inflammation to blood vessels.
Amy,
Yes.
perfect lead into you, because you are the person to go to when it comes to healthy lifestyles, certainly healthy eating. Let me ask you this. For those people, because as we all know, Americans still particularly Americans, are very busy people. They always seem to be running. In fact, I was just on holiday in London with friends of mine outside of London. There's no doubt, no matter how busy their day is, they will take a moment to make sure their dinner is prepared, usually at home, and they will take that moment with family, with a friend, even alone, to make sure they're eating properly. Our lifestyle here in America continues to be one of being rushed and picking up food. And that, I think, is one of our big culprits. So, talk to us about lifestyle. Even if we're people who eat on the run a lot, how can we manage that, please?
So that was a really important factor, Deborah. And the communal eating, these tenets of the Mediterranean diet and lifestyle, the eating fresh food, the eating local food. It sounds a lot repetitive to say it over and over again, but it really does have a big payoff. And anybody who subscribes to this, no matter where they are in the world, really are doing themselves and the people that they love a favor.
Yeah.
But in addition to nutrition, also physical activity is really important, and we have a lot of statistics in the book about how that can help, and what types of physical activity are good. We talk about sleep. Sleep is really, really important and not looked at enough. And it's one thing to just tell people to get more sleep, but it's another thing to look at how much is enough for each individual. What are obstacles that prevent them from getting good sleep, and how can we help with that? We even look at relaxation techniques and what could be called stress management, but I like to call them more joy management, because we don't really want to be in the business of managing stress. We want to enjoy ourselves. And so, things like yoga and Tai Chi and breath work and meditation and, positive imagery, emotional freedom technique, tapping, there are so many different types of modalities that are available to us nowadays for free. And so we even talk about things like that in the book.
What are foods, and again, I'm going to go back to people who grab their food on the go. What are foods that can be healthy? Look, we all know the fast food situation is pretty much a disaster for our culture. But let's
Right.
say you're on the run. What can you eat that tends to be healthy if you're somebody who's on the run?
Sure.
You're running through a train station and you have to pick something up because you got no time. What do you recommend?
That's a good point. So no matter where you are, some of the things to look at with cholesterol are foods that are, rich in fiber, which historically they've been touting for a long time. Healthful fats. So this is new, because before they were always talking about low fat. We're not really promoting low fat. We're promoting healthful fats, especially extra virgin olive oil, avocado, things like that. Also, lean sources of protein, and things which have the polyphenols that Simon is an expert on, and these bioactive compounds. So a lot of herbs, spices, beans, legumes, nuts, seeds, Greek yogurt, fish, things like that. So if you're running through an airport, you can usually get some kind of Greek yogurt, and maybe you could get that with a little bit of seeds or berries. Maybe you could get a salad with cruciferous vegetables, and hopefully you could get extra virgin olive oil or lemon juice or vinegar to put on it. Or maybe you're even a fanatic like us and you travel with your own. Maybe you could, sit down to a restaurant and get some good quality fish. That would be a good option, or any other kind of lean protein like lean chicken, whole grains. Could you get some kind of a whole grain oatmeal or a quinoa, something like that in the mix? And fruits and vegetables are always really good options. Almonds, nuts that have healthful fats, unsalted, are really good things.
I have to tell you, you got me hooked on putting olive oil in my Greek yogurt. Every day I do it, and my kids initially were like, "You're doing what?" Well, guess what? They're into it too. And that is a good snack, people. A really, really good snack. I look forward to it. Whenever I'm a little hungry and I want something a little sweet, I just have plain Greek yogurt, put my extra virgin olive oil, and it does the trick. And I did something healthy for myself. It was quick. So I thank you for that. I really do, because you've given me that tool has stayed with me.
That's great. And people don't realize Greek yogurt is a complete meal, technically, because it has the three macronutrients in it. It's got a good source of fat, carbohydrate, and also a significant amount of protein. And then when you put the extra virgin olive oil on it, that's predominantly a monounsaturated fat. So it can lower the LDL. It can also raise the HDL, which is the good cholesterol. It's full of antioxidants. And it also helps you to absorb more nutrients out of the yogurt. So it's a win-win.
You know what I do that's also easy? I'll grab some spinach, just anything that's sitting in my fridge. I'll put it in the blender and wow, I have like a terrific drink, spinach, cucumber, whatever's just sitting there, a banana, a little bit of pineapple, just something that's maybe a day old, right? And I'm just putting it in and ooh, if I don't have a terrific drink. Again, thanks to you guys, because I've really been very cognizant of what I'm doing. I tend to be somebody who's a little on the go too much, trying to figure that out. But there are ways to do it. Like we don't always have to make that excuse. There's an extra 5 minutes in everybody's day where we can do it. Dr. Simon, I can see that you want to say something.
So I was just saying that what you both have described there is absolute complete description of how you control and manage not only your cholesterol levels, but also the oxidation of the cholesterol. So again, the healthy carbohydrates we've described with plenty of fiber and the polyphenols, these antioxidant compounds that often give a bitter taste, a pleasantly bitter taste, and often the color in things like berries will again help you reduce the oxidation of the LDL cholesterol, which will reduce the risks of heart disease and stroke. So this is a perfect way describing those kind of foods to make that happen. And fiber as well is really crucial because not only does it decrease the absorption of cholesterol, but actually it supports a really healthy gut microbiome, so that actually we now understand that that also influences whether or not we make more of the bad LDL cholesterol or whether we're going to increase our healthy HDL cholesterol. So all those foods are such a wonderful way to get those cholesterol numbers down, but also to reduce this mysterious oxidized LDL cholesterol, which we don't measure, but which is really, really significant in terms of the risk of having these kind of problems.
When we go to the doctor, is there a particular test that we should ask for? Because usually they'll say, oh, we're going to run your cholesterol. Is there something else we should ask in addition to that?
Well, not at the moment. At the moment, unfortunately, no doctor routinely measures oxidized LDL cholesterol, unfortunately. And that's because the tests are expensive and they're not uniform. So maybe in 5 to 10 years' time, we will have a better understanding. But one thing I know intuitively as a physician is I can have two patients in front of me, one with exactly the same cholesterol level, one of whom is having a fantastic Mediterranean diet and who is exercising, and another who is perhaps not exercising, lives a sedentary life and has a very, very poor diet. They may have very similar cholesterols, but actually I know for sure that the person with the Mediterranean diet and who's exercising has got much lower levels of oxidized LDL. They're bound to, and they have lower risks of heart disease and stroke. And so when you look in the Mediterranean populations, and studies have been done, irrespective of their cholesterol levels, by having the kind of Mediterranean diet and the healthy lifestyle, you reduce your risks of heart disease and stroke by 30%, which is as much as medication, medications do for you. So our answer in the book is to help people to understand this, to understand all the elements of a healthy diet and its effect on cholesterol, but also how to reduce the oxidation and inflammation through all the ways in which Amy and indeed you have so eloquently described.
Yeah, Amy, let's talk about that Mediterranean diet, which you both also did another book on. These Dummies books are terrific, people. They really are, because for somebody like me, I need my facts, and you have terrific facts in there, fast and quick. And then if I need, and you're actually also very comprehensive in the book, which is really amazing. So I have to say that, people, it's a terrific book. I would actually suggest picking it up, Managing Cholesterol for Dummies. But some of that Mediterranean diet, obviously we know the extra virgin olive oil, but what else, Amy? Let's talk about that. And when you talk about lifestyle, do you need to run 10 miles a day? Is it just, walking around the block? Let's talk about that. Because I'm looking for those people who need it simple.
Sure. Walking definitely does provide a lot of benefits, and it's kind of the main form of exercise in the Mediterranean. So how briskly and how long really depends upon your weight, your factors, your health condition with your doctor. But a good 30 minutes of physical activity per day, different for ages and different for all kinds of factors considered, is important. With the recipes and with the ingredients in the Mediterranean diet, one of the things that's commonly overlooked by Americans are beans and legumes. They're just things that Americans tend to not eat very much of, but that they do in the Mediterranean. Whenever they interview the centurions on the news in Italy, they're always, "What did you eat?" "Oh, I ate a lot of pasta and fagioli, a lot of pasta with beans." "Oh, I ate a lot of lentils. We grew up on lentils and whole grain soups," and you can see they always have the same answer. So lentils, beans, cannellini beans are really good for people. Chickpeas, different things like that. To get servings of legumes every day is a really good idea. And then the whole grains, spices. So people are thinking, well, these don't have a lot of flavor, but spices have a ton of flavor. I've got an anti-inflammatory spice mix in the book that I like to put in things with ginger and turmeric and cinnamon and cardamom, all of these really richly flavored spices. So we've got breakfast that consists of like chocolate ginger waffles with vanilla berry syrup, pomegranate and walnut dip with za'atar spice, pita chips, barley and red wine risotto with red cabbage and cannellini beans. I mean, these are restaurant-worthy foods that don't take a lot of time or money, and that you can make in advance. Or the book also gives tips about how to set up a pantry, because in order to get to that 5 minutes a day, and I've recorded like video series for sports equipment companies and things where they talk about that for athletes. You've got to do the prep work. So there's got to be a little time dedicated to set up a pantry, a little time dedicated to what we're going to eat or I'm going to eat, and then a little time dedicated to the shopping and the preparation. But it's worth it. It's so worth the payoff.
Let me ask you this. You mentioned waffles, okay? We're not talking the frozen ones, are we? We're
Right.
talking, but so then what do we do there? Again, especially, I'm telling you, especially in my opinion, American people, we are used to just going to the grocery store, grabbing the frozen waffles and making it. Now, people, please look at the ingredients on that frozen waffle box. Oh my gosh, it'll give you a headache and it'll blow you up with inflammation. At least I believe that. I'm not a doctor. So what should we do? What kind of waffle do we get? What kind of waffle mix? See what I mean? That's the confusion, in my opinion.
Sure.
And then I think that's going to blow us up, give us inflammation, start the whole process. So
Right.
Go ahead.
Those are great points, Deborah. It's really important for people to embrace either cooking or assembling food or having someone else cook for them, because the more homemade you can get, even if it's simple, like a banana and yogurt and olive oil, is much better than a meal purchased from the freezer section, no matter what it is. And you could buy your ingredients from the freezer section. You could get some fish and some frozen vegetables and make them in 5 minutes from the broiler. And the funny thing is, a lot of frozen foods, if you read the directions, it'll say like, bake for 20 minutes, do this, and it's one thing. So maybe you're having to do a little bit of thinking in there, but cooking is good for you. Cooking is also an activity that has been proven to lower depression and help with ADHD and focus and concentration and all these things. So we've got to glamorize and we've got to romanticize cooking a little bit.
Yeah, and it's fun. Put on some music, your favorite music,
Right.
or is there a TV program you enjoy? Although that could be a little confusing. Just do something to get you going.
Exactly.
I'm not a natural cook. My entire family was. They did everything. My mom, my dad, my sister. So I was sort of the younger one in the family, and I'd run off and play. So I didn't really grow up to be one, but I've had to become one for my health. So we can all find the time. We can all learn to do it, even if you burn it like I do half the time. The other half of the time you don't. So just stick with it is what I like to say. It's healthier. It's healthier.
Yes.
Now, what in terms of exercise? Because what is the best? Again, you got a time issue. What would you suggest? Should you do weights?
Shall I come back on that? I think you could
Yes.
do several different types of exercise, and it's just as important to build up some the lean muscle power as well as to get some cardiovascular fitness. So the kind of exercise numbers that Amy's just been talking about, 150 minutes a week, something like that. But actually, it's about building it up and about doing what's comfortable for you. There's a significant gain of just starting to go walking instead of sitting on the couch. That's a very, very big significant gain. If you go and work out in a gym, that's fantastic. You can do that. But the real gain is just to get up and move. So we talk about movement, we talk about healthy movement, about doing exercise in particular that you enjoy and that you love, because that's the key to how you're going to make it sustainable. And then doing some resistance work as well. Again, we include this in all of our books, is also really a great way to build that muscle strength, which as we age, we particularly need to preserve and make sure that we've got got reasonably good muscle powers to keep our balance and poise. And things like Pilates are good for that as well. So again, one of the unique aspects to our books is that we draw in, as Amy was saying, all of these different modalities of health and wellness, which ultimately will impact our general health, levels of inflammation, as Amy was talking about, inflammation in relation to diet. And again, exercise really decreases the amount of chronic inflammation that goes on. So that's again something we cover in the book. And I just like, if I may, just to go back to the list of ingredients that you were saying, because I think that's really relevant as well. Scratch cooking is absolutely great, but if you do have to go down to the store to get something, as you said, Deborah, it's so important to look at the ingredient list, and we give some hints and tips about how you can make wise choices around those ingredients lists to make sure that you're really picking up the clean products, because there are companies now who are producing really clean versions of, for example, waffles. You can find them, but you have to know and understand how to make that decision and how to buy those clean products.
Are there any stores in particular that you could mention or would like to mention, or I don't know, maybe you don't do that, that, hey, perhaps, go shopping at this store and they might have, or not really, you just sort of leave it up to us to find that. Because I don't know if you want to endorse something like that, I'm just asking.
Well, of course, the although I visit the States very frequently, the stores in the States are quite different from stores in Europe.
They are,
But
yeah.
there are apps now you can download, which I'm very happy to talk about. A particular app called Yucca, which is Yuka, and that's a pretty good app, which it has come out of Europe, but it applies to pretty much everything in the US as well. And what you do is you load it down onto your phone, and you can scan the barcode on anything that's on the supermarket shelves, and it will give you a score, whether it's excellent, good, or poor, and it will also give you a list of the ingredients which the nutritionists who wrote the app are uncomfortable with, and it'll give you even links to the science behind some of those additives that are of concern. So that's a really good place to start. But you can also just look at the length of the ingredient list, frankly, and whether or not, as Michael Pollan so famously said, whether or not it's something that your grandmother would have recognized. Because if it's not something that your grandmother would have recognized as a food, then it's probably not a great thing to have. And if you take typical bread can have 5 ingredients:
right.
Wheat, yeast, water, salt. It can have 30 ingredients in a supermarket, and just intuitively that tells us, okay, well, we're not going to go. We shouldn't be going for the bread that contains 30 ingredients. Why are they all there?
Gosh, if people get anything out of this interview, Amy, I think you went to the side there. There we go. If they get anything out of this interview, I want them to understand to read ingredients, because one thing leads to the next. If you're not putting the proper, good foods in your body, and your ingredient list is this big, what do you think it's going to do to your body? Eventually, something just isn't going to work, whether it's the cholesterol, which then, of course, works in tandem with inflammation, headaches, bloating, weight gain. Good heavens. I mean, that's critical. Amy, do you want to speak to that?
I was part of a panel discussion here in DC back in October with a group of Italian scientists that came, and we talked about things like soil and the Mediterranean diet and how it's done in Italy versus how it's done here. And one of the first things that we looked at was the ingredients that are put into even junk foods, what is in them in America versus what is in them in Europe. And so the same type of thing that, first of all, we wouldn't recommend eating anyway, but in Europe, maybe it has 5 or 6 ingredients in it. And in America, it'll have about 50 or 60, some of which, are cancer causing or flammable or whatever. So what Simon is saying about the ingredients is definitely true. And the more simple and the more pure it can be, the better it is. You don't have to become a great chef, but you have to be able to appreciate that if you can put something together on your own, you're probably, going to be better off than not. Because in this book, for example, in the case of the waffles, I use dark chocolate, a good quality dark cocoa, which has antioxidants in it. I use flaxseed, I use whole grain, I use eggs, and you get all of those nutrients in the food that if I don't know what would be in the one that you were purchasing from a freezer section. If you were going to do that, I'd rather have you do yogurt or fresh fruit and almonds or something like that for breakfast.
Yeah, no. In your book, you talk about the 10 misconceptions about cholesterol. We don't have too much time, but if you want to go through one or two of those, that would be great. Because everybody hears the word cholesterol and they think, oh, it's awful. That's not the case. Can you address that?
Sure, I can
Either?
start and then Simon can finish. I
Sure.
think one of the things is a lot of people think that you can't make a difference with cholesterol unless you get on medicine and like a prescription pill. And so we prove different ways that are already shown to help with that. I think the other big misconception is that all cholesterol is bad. People don't realize that there's a balance and that cholesterol does play an important part. The risk factors and what Simon was talking about, that there are risk factors with cholesterol. And then some people think, only people who are overweight have cholesterol, which isn't true at all. A lot of, especially women, post-menopause women, any kind of major lifestyle changes we can see, playing a role in cholesterol. And also people think, okay, cholesterol is just about arteries, but there's other things that it can do if it's not balanced that can cause a problem. Simon, I'll let you take it from there.
I think for me, one of the greatest misconceptions is of people failing if they adopt lifestyle measures that don't dramatically reduce their cholesterol. So I think the important message for me is that if you are advised to reduce your cholesterol level, then absolutely do lifestyle things that will reduce it, diet and exercise. And I don't mean a restrictive diet, I mean the Mediterranean diet. And if you go back to your physician and they measure your cholesterol again, and it's gone down a little bit, but it hasn't been dramatically reduced, please don't give up, because all of those changes that you're making are making a real difference to your risks of heart disease and stroke. They're making a real difference to the amount of oxidation that you've got in your body. They're making a real difference to the amount of inflammation that you've got. They're making a real positive effect on your gut microbiome, which we know controls so much around our metabolism. So if you are told you have a high cholesterol and you do try and do some of these things, then really go for it and think of the ways in which it's going to improve your health in general, and regard it as being a great success if you can really turn your nutrition around, and if you can really get some exercise, if you've led a sedentary life until now.
Mm. Amy, you are of Italian descent, and Dr. Simon, you live in England. Especially being an Italian, Amy, one of the main, growing up, I remember all the aunts and uncles, they'd have a meal, off they go in the street or on the sidewalk and walk around the block. And you address that just before I let you go, about the Italian lifestyle or European lifestyle in terms of just they do this naturally, right?
Right. So there's the culture of the passeggiata or the stroll, after a meal, which is very, very healthy and rewarding because it helps with digestion, it helps with getting fresh air, socialization, exercise, all of the things that are really known, to be beneficial. And so it's a lovely ritual if people can pursue it. And I see people from all cultures, doing it. And it's a wonderful little thing that also Americans could adopt if they were so interested.
Hmm. Any parting words from you, Dr. Simon, that you'd like to add on to that or anything else?
Well, just that I think like in the US, in Northern Europe, in Northwestern Europe, we do have, unfortunately, this relationship with ultra-processed foods, with a lack of exercise. And when I visit the Mediterranean, which I do very, very frequently, I see this difference in approach. And actually, that approach allows people to celebrate food and to
Yeah.
celebrate going for that stroll and to celebrate eating in company. And it just is such a better atmosphere for having a healthier lifestyle, having those lower levels of cholesterol, having those lower levels of LDL, bad cholesterol, and having lower levels of chronic inflammation, which we see in the science and in the research show that they live healthier and longer lives, adding years to life and life to years, which is what we want everybody to be able to do through our book.
I love that. Adding years to life and life to years. That's a terrific one. I'm going to use that. Thank you for sharing that. Please, people, pick up Managing Cholesterol for Dummies. This is a fabulous book. I enjoyed reading it. And what's terrific about your books, they're easy to thumb through, and I do keep them on my kitchen counter. Thank you very much for sending each one of these to me. I have an entire dummy series from all of you, and we look through it. My kids look through it. They enjoy cooking, actually. So I appreciate it. And I know you both care so much about this too. There's terrific passion and care in what you each do. And I'm very grateful to you for that, because it matters and it shows. Now, if people want to get in touch with either of you, how can they do that? First of all, pick up the book, but how else?
Sure. So the books are available on on my website, on Amazon, and we both have our own websites that they can follow up with us, drsimonpoole.com or amyriolo.com.
Wonderful. And do you feel like, we got everything in there for our audience, or is there any parting words that you have that you want to share?
I would like to say that, one of the things that we often draw research on is what Simon found in his practice, what I've learned either from people that I've taught or in my own health journey. And so it's a really comprehensive mix of trying to find solutions that will work for everybody. And so, whether people are struggling with this or not, there are solutions in here that will either help you to prevent any issues with cholesterol or really help you to manage it, and, doing it in a way that will be enjoyable.
Terrific point. Thank you. Go ahead, doctor.
And I think my point on parting really is to say that we live in a world where the medical model is to really often end up giving medications to people. And I really, and Amy and I are really passionate about people feeling that they can have conversations with their physician about their lifestyle, about their Mediterranean diet, about their levels of exercise, because lifestyle medicine is beginning to emerge as an area of importance within medicine. And I'm very passionate about it. I know many other physicians are, but it's not there yet. And I think patients and people need to engage with physicians and their doctors in a constructive way about how they can support and align with what our ambitions with doing great stuff with our lifestyle and feeling better and really being better in our physical and also our mental health.
Thank you both so much for joining us. Honestly, it's a pleasure to have you. I enjoy you both so much. You're among my favorite guests. And I don't know what you're working on for next year, but I'm looking forward to having you back again. Or we can, talk about a culmination of all 5 of your books, your Dummies books that you've done together. This one, Managing Cholesterol for Dummies. Please pick it up. Obviously available on Amazon and anywhere else that you order your books from. So please, everybody, you can find my interview with Amy Riolo and Dr. Simon Poole on YouTube. Then we'll post it as an audio podcast on the iHeartRadio app, Spotify, and anywhere else. We post promos of our interview, usually on Instagram and Facebook. So honestly, we're everywhere. Just look up Deborah Cobelt Live and the Little Italy podcast, and you'll find our interviews. So thank you all for joining us. Thank you both in particular for joining us. And we'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.